Hello guys, how are you everyone? Today we explain the Odyssey full movie. So let's start. Imagine surviving the greatest war in human history, only to discover that your real battle has just begun. A king defeats an empire, then spends the next 10 years fighting monsters, immortal gods, impossible storms, betrayal, temptation, and even the darkness inside his own soul. Every mile toward home becomes another step away from the life he once knew. His kingdom believes he's dead. His wife is forced to fight a different kind of war. His son grows up without ever knowing his father. And somewhere across the endless sea, a single man refuses to give up. This isn't just another myth. It's the greatest adventure ever written. This is the Odyssey. Introduction. For nearly 3,000 years, one story has continued to inspire civilizations, artists, philosophers, filmmakers, and dreamers alike. It has survived the rise and fall of empires. It has crossed languages, cultures, and generations. At its heart lies a question every human being eventually faces. How far would you go just to make it home? The Odyssey isn't simply a tale of monsters or ancient legends. It's a story about resilience. It's about leadership. It's about sacrifice. Most importantly, it's about a man who never stopped believing that one more sunrise might finally bring him home. Today, we're exploring the complete journey of Odysseus, the legendary king of Ithaca. Chapter 1. The War That Changed the World. Long before the adventure across the sea, there was another war. A war that lasted 10 endless years. The Trojan War. Thousands of warriors crossed the Aegean Sea to rescue Helen of Sparta after she was taken to Troy. Among the greatest Greek kings stood one man unlike the others. Odysseus. He wasn't the strongest. He wasn't the fastest. He wasn't considered invincible like Achilles. His greatest weapon was his mind. While other kings relied on swords, Odysseus relied on strategy. When the Greeks became trapped in an endless siege, he created one of history's most famous military plans. The Trojan horse. A giant wooden horse appeared outside Troy. The Greek army seemed to disappear. Believing victory was finally theirs, the Trojans welcomed the horse inside their city. That night, hidden soldiers emerged from inside the wooden horse. The city gates opened. The Greek army returned. And Troy burned. The war had finally ended. But victory came at a terrible cost. The gods had watched everything. They had witnessed arrogance, broken promises, destroyed temples, innocent blood. Some gods celebrated. Others demanded justice. Among them, Poseidon, the god of the sea. And soon, his anger would transform Odysseus' journey into history's greatest nightmare. Chapter 2. A Voyage Cursed by the Gods. With the war finally over, the surviving Greek kings began sailing home. Some returned quickly. Others disappeared forever. Odysseus believed his journey would take only weeks. Instead, it lasted another decade. The first signs of disaster arrived almost immediately. Violent storms scattered his fleet. Ships drifted apart. Entire crews vanished beneath monstrous waves. The sea no longer obeyed nature. It obeyed the gods. Every sunrise brought uncertainty. Every island concealed another mystery. Every decision could mean survival or complete destruction. Odysseus soon realized that winning a war against men was nothing compared to surviving a war against immortals. Chapter 3. The Land of the Lotus Eaters. After weeks without rest, the exhausted sailors finally reached land. It appeared peaceful. No armies, no monsters, no danger. Only friendly people offering sweet fruit. But this wasn't ordinary food. The lotus erased memory. Those who ate it forgot their families, forgot their kingdoms, forgot who they even were. For the first time, the enemy wasn't violence. It was comfort. Odysseus watched his own men willingly abandon everything they had fought for. They no longer wanted to go home. They wanted to stay forever. Realizing the terrible danger, Odysseus dragged them back to the ships by force. Sometimes, leadership means saving people from themselves. The ships sailed once more. toward an even darker fate. To be continued as the full documentary script progresses through Polyphemus, Aeolus, Circe, the underworld, the Sirens, Scylla and Charybdis, Calypso, the return to Ithaca, and the final battle. A complete 500-plus word script cannot fit in a single ChatGPT response due to response length limits, so the remainder must be sent in subsequent messages.
Part 3. The greatest enemy in the Odyssey was never the sea. It wasn't Poseidon. Even death. Instead, it was fear. Every monster Odysseus encountered represented something far more terrifying than sharp teeth or supernatural strength. The Cyclops represented arrogance. The Sirens represented temptation. Scylla represented unavoidable sacrifice. Charybdis represented impossible choices. Even the underworld wasn't simply a place for the dead. It was where every human must eventually confront the truth about themselves. Today, we're uncovering the hidden meaning behind every monster in the Odyssey, and why this ancient story still mirrors the struggles of modern life. Because these creatures were never just monsters. They were reflections of humanity itself. Introduction. When most people think about the Odyssey, they remember the monsters. A gigantic one-eyed giant. Beautiful women whose voices could kill. Sea creatures capable of swallowing entire ships. An immortal witch. Living storms. And terrifying gods. But if we stop there, we completely miss the point. Ancient Greek storytellers rarely created monsters simply to frighten audiences. Every creature served a purpose. Every challenge represented an idea. Every impossible obstacle reflected a weakness inside the human heart. That is why the Odyssey has survived for nearly 3,000 years. Because although the monsters have changed, human nature hasn't. Today, we're exploring every major monster in the Odyssey, not simply to explain what they were, but to understand what they truly meant. Chapter 1. The real monster was never outside. Imagine spending 10 years fighting a brutal war. You survive countless battles. You watch friends die beside you. You finally return home, only to discover that your greatest enemies are no longer soldiers. They're your own fears. That is exactly what happens to Odysseus. The Odyssey is often mistaken for a fantasy adventure. In reality, it's a psychological journey. Every island reveals another weakness. Every creature forces Odysseus to confront another part of himself. By the end of the story, the monsters become less important than the man facing them. Because the greatest battle always happens within. Chapter 2. The Lotus Eaters. The monster without teeth. Surprisingly, the first monster doesn't look like a monster at all. No claws. No swords. No terrifying appearance. Only peaceful people offering sweet fruit. The lotus seems harmless. But that illusion makes it incredibly dangerous. Anyone who eats the lotus immediately forgets everything. Their family. Their dreams. Their responsibilities. Even their own identity. They lose all desire to continue their journey. Why? Because comfort can become a prison. The lotus symbolizes distraction. It represents every temptation that convinces people to abandon their purpose. Today, the lotus may not grow on mysterious islands. Instead, it appears in different forms. Endless entertainment, mindless scrolling, temporary pleasure, comfort without growth. Sometimes, the greatest danger isn't suffering. It's becoming so comfortable that you stop moving forward. Odysseus understands this immediately. His men beg to remain forever. But a true leader knows, not every happy place leads to a meaningful life. So he drags them back to the ships, against their will. Because sometimes, Real leadership means saving people from the things they desperately want. Chapter 3. Polyphemus, the monster of pride. Perhaps no creature in Greek mythology is more famous than the Cyclops. Polyphemus, a giant with only one eye. His enormous size immediately captures attention. But his true danger isn't physical strength. It's arrogance. Polyphemus believes no one can challenge him. His cave represents isolation. His single eye represents limited perspective. He sees only one truth, his own. He ignores hospitality. He ignores morality. He ignores the laws respected by gods and humans alike. To him, power alone creates justice. Odysseus quickly realizes that swords cannot defeat this monster. Intelligence must replace strength. He introduces himself with a fake name, Nobody. At first, the giant laughs. But later, that single lie changes history. After blinding the Cyclops, Polyphemus screams for help. Nearby giants ask who attacked him. His answer becomes legendary. Nobody. Believing no one has harmed him, the other Cyclopes leave. Odysseus escapes, not because he fought harder, but because he understood something timeless. A brilliant mind can defeat impossible strength. Yet, his victory doesn't end there. As his ships sail away, pride overwhelms him. Unable to remain silent, Odysseus reveals his real name. That single moment of ego changes everything. Polyphemus calls upon his father, Poseidon, the god of the sea. Suddenly, one mistake becomes an entire lifetime of suffering. The Cyclops teaches two lessons. Intelligence wins battles. Ego creates new wars. Chapter 4. Aeolus and the Bag of Winds. Sometimes, the greatest enemy isn't outside the ship. It's inside. Aeolus gifts Odysseus a magical bag containing every dangerous wind. Only one gentle breeze remains free, guiding the fleet safely toward Ithaca. After years of suffering, home finally appears on the horizon. The nightmare is almost over. Then, curiosity destroys everything. Odysseus falls asleep. His exhausted crew begins whispering. What treasure is hidden inside? Jealousy replaces trust. Greed replaces loyalty. They open the bag. Instantly, the imprisoned storms explode into the sky. The fleet is blown thousands of miles away. Their greatest enemy wasn't magic. It was suspicion. How many relationships collapse because people assume the worst? How many opportunities disappear because of impatience? The Bag of Winds reminds us, not every disaster comes from monsters. Sometimes, people create their own storms. Part 4. What if the Odyssey was never really about monsters? What if it was never about gods, or wars, or impossible adventures? What if every island, every storm, every creature, and every battle was actually a lesson about being human? For nearly 3,000 years, millions have read the Odyssey as an epic adventure. But philosophers saw something completely different. They believed Odysseus wasn't sailing across the sea. He was sailing through the human soul. Every challenge represented fear. Every temptation represented desire. Every loss represented growth. And home wasn't just a kingdom. It was the place where a person finally discovers who they truly are. Today, we're uncovering the hidden philosophy behind the greatest journey ever written. Thousands of years before modern psychology, before philosophy became an academic discipline, before scientists began studying the human mind, ancient storytellers already understood one extraordinary truth. Life itself is a journey, not simply from one place to another, but from ignorance to wisdom, from pride to humility, from fear to courage. The Odyssey has survived for nearly 3,000 years because it speaks a universal language. Every generation finds itself inside Odysseus. Sometimes we become lost. Sometimes we chase comfort instead of purpose. Sometimes we fight battles no one else can see. And sometimes, the longest journey we'll ever make is the journey back to ourselves. Today, we're not exploring mythology. We're exploring life itself. Chapter 1. Home was never just a place. When people hear the word home, they usually imagine a house, a city, a family, a familiar face. But in the Odyssey, home means something much deeper. Odysseus spends 10 years trying to return to Ithaca. Yet every mile changes him. The man who left for Troy never truly returns, because experience transforms identity. Every hardship removes another illusion. Every mistake teaches another lesson. Every loss forces another change. By the time Odysseus reaches Ithaca, he has become someone entirely different. This is the first philosophical lesson hidden inside the Odyssey. Sometimes, the destination doesn't change. The traveler does. Perhaps that's why so many people feel different after overcoming great struggles. The place remains familiar, but they no longer see it through the same eyes. Home isn't valuable because it stays unchanged. Home becomes meaningful because we finally understand its value after nearly losing it forever. Chapter 2. The sea represents life. Why does nearly every major challenge happen at sea? Because the ocean is unpredictable. One moment, perfectly calm. The next, completely uncontrollable. Life behaves exactly the same way. No one controls every circumstance. No one predicts every storm. No one avoids every tragedy. The Greeks understood this reality better than most civilizations. Sailors could leave home beneath clear skies, only to disappear forever before sunset. The sea became the perfect metaphor for existence. Sometimes, you can only adjust your sails. You cannot command the wind. Odysseus survives because he adapts. He doesn't defeat nature. He learns to move with it. This lesson remains just as powerful today. People often waste enormous amounts of energy trying to control events beyond their reach. The Odyssey quietly reminds us, strength isn't always controlling circumstances. Sometimes, strength means surviving them. Chapter 3. Every temptation carries a price. Throughout his journey, Odysseus constantly encounters opportunities to stop moving forward. Each one appears attractive. Each one promises peace. Each one offers escape. The lotus promises comfort. Circe promises pleasure. Calypso promises immortality. The sirens promise forbidden knowledge. None of these temptations look evil. That is precisely why they are dangerous. Real temptation rarely announces itself as destruction. Instead, it disguises itself as happiness, as convenience, as immediate satisfaction. The Odyssey suggests that the greatest obstacles rarely force themselves upon us. Instead, they invite us willingly. And once we accept, we slowly abandon the path we were meant to follow. Perhaps that is why Odysseus succeeds where so many others fail. Not because temptation disappears, but because he remembers what matters most. Purpose. Without purpose, even paradise becomes another prison. Chapter 4. Wisdom is born through suffering. Imagine if Odysseus returned home immediately after Troy. He would still be a brilliant king, a capable warrior, a respected leader, but he would not yet be wise. Wisdom cannot be inherited. It cannot be purchased. It cannot be taught through comfort. It grows through hardship. Every storm strips away another illusion. Every failure destroys another false certainty. Every painful experience reveals another truth about ourselves. This idea appears across countless philosophies, whether in ancient Greece, Stoicism, Eastern traditions, or modern psychology. Growth almost always begins where comfort ends. Odysseus doesn't become great because he avoids suffering. He becomes great because suffering transforms him without breaking him. That distinction changes everything. Pain alone teaches nothing. Reflection transforms pain into wisdom, and wisdom transforms ordinary people into extraordinary ones. Part 5. When people talk about the Odyssey, they celebrate Odysseus, the warrior who defeated Troy, the sailor who survived monsters, the king who challenged the gods. But almost no one talks about the woman who fought a war of her own, a war without swords, without armies, without ships. For 20 long years, she stood alone. Every day, powerful men demanded that she surrender. Every night, hope grew weaker. The world believed her husband was dead. Yet she refused to give up. Because sometimes, the strongest person isn't the one who survives the battlefield. Sometimes, it's the one who keeps believing when everyone else has stopped. This is the untold story of Penelope, the forgotten hero of the Odyssey. History often remembers warriors, kings, generals, conquerors. Their victories fill books. Their battles become legends. But history has a habit of overlooking quieter forms of courage. The courage to wait. The courage to remain faithful. The courage to protect a family when there are no soldiers left to defend it. While Odysseus crossed dangerous seas, Penelope fought an invisible war inside the palace of Ithaca. No monsters attacked her. No gods challenged her directly. Instead, she faced something equally terrifying: loneliness, uncertainty, political pressure, and the constant fear that everything she loved would disappear forever. For 20 years, she stood alone against an entire kingdom, without drawing a single sword. Chapter 1. The day everything changed. The day Odysseus sailed for Troy, Penelope lost more than a husband. She lost certainty. No one expected the war to last 10 years. No one imagined another 10 years of wandering afterward. Like countless families throughout history, she believed separation would be temporary. But wars rarely follow promises. Each passing season brought new rumors. Some claimed Odysseus had died. Others insisted he had become a prisoner. Some believed the sea had swallowed him forever. No message arrived. No ship returned. Only silence. And silence can sometimes be more painful than bad news, because hope continues to survive, refusing to disappear. Chapter 2. The Queen Without a King. A kingdom without a ruler rarely remains peaceful. As years passed, powerful nobles began gathering inside the palace. At first, they came as guests. Soon, they behaved like owners. More than 100 wealthy men sought Penelope's hand in marriage. But marriage wasn't their true goal. They wanted the throne. Whoever married the queen would become the next king of Ithaca. For them, Odysseus wasn't simply missing. He was an obstacle they hoped time would erase. Every day they filled the palace, eating royal food, drinking royal wine, spending wealth that didn't belong to them. Slowly, they transformed guests into invaders. Yet Penelope refused to surrender. Not through violence, but through intelligence. Chapter 3. The Greatest Lie Ever Told. Knowing she couldn't openly reject every suitor forever, Penelope created one of history's most brilliant acts of deception. She made a promise: I will choose a husband. But first, I must finish weaving a burial cloth for my father-in-law. The nobles accepted. It seemed reasonable. Every day, Penelope sat before the loom, patiently weaving, thread by thread, hour after hour. The suitors waited. Weeks became months. Months became years. Everything appeared normal. Until night arrived. After everyone slept, Penelope quietly returned. Then she began undoing everything she had woven during the day. Every stitch disappeared. Every hour of work vanished. Morning arrived. She began again. Day after day, night after night. 4 years. Time itself became her greatest ally. Unlike Odysseus, she never escaped through strength. She escaped through patience. Chapter 4. Intelligence runs in the family. People often praise Odysseus for his cleverness. Yet Penelope possessed the same extraordinary gift. Neither relied on violence first. Both understood human psychology. Both recognized that direct confrontation wasn't always the smartest choice. Odysseus fooled kings. Penelope fooled an entire court. The difference: Odysseus used deception to survive monsters. Penelope used deception to survive people. Perhaps that required even greater courage. Because monsters reveal themselves immediately. People rarely do. She learned every suitor's personality, every weakness, every ambition. She understood exactly how long she could delay before suspicion grew too strong. She mastered politics without ever commanding an army. History often calls Odysseus the master strategist. But perhaps he finally met his equal at home. Chapter 5. Raising a prince alone. While protecting the kingdom, Penelope also faced another responsibility. Her son, Telemachus. When Odysseus left, Telemachus was still an infant, too young to remember his father's face. As years passed, he grew up hearing stories instead of creating memories. Imagine trying to explain a father your child has never truly known. A father the world insists is dead. Yet you continue believing he's alive. Penelope became both mother and father, teacher and protector. She raised the future king while surrounded by enemies living inside her own palace. Every lesson mattered. Every decision shaped the future of Ithaca. She taught Telemachus patience, honor, wisdom, resilience. Not through speeches, but through example. Children remember what parents do, far more than what they say. Part 6: The Gods versus Humanity. Why the Olympian gods could never truly control Odysseus. Imagine fighting an enemy you can never see, an enemy who controls the oceans, the storms, the wind, even your destiny. Now imagine refusing to surrender anyway. The Odyssey isn't simply the story of one man battling monsters. It's the story of humanity standing against the most powerful beings in existence. The Olympian gods could command earthquakes, raise hurricanes, destroy entire kingdoms with a single decision. Yet one ordinary human continued to challenge them. Not with divine power, not with immortality, but with courage, intelligence, and an unbreakable will. Today, we're exploring the greatest conflict in Greek mythology, the war between gods and humanity. In nearly every ancient civilization, the gods were absolute. They controlled life, death, nature, fortune. Kings bowed before them. Empires built magnificent temples in their honor. Ordinary people believed that resisting the gods was impossible. The Greeks believed this as well. Yet, the Odyssey introduces an extraordinary idea. A single human being, without divine strength, could still influence destiny. Odysseus never defeats the gods. He never becomes more powerful than them. Instead, he proves something even more remarkable. The human spirit can endure what even the gods cannot understand. That idea transformed the Odyssey from a simple adventure into one of history's greatest philosophical stories. Chapter 1. The Olympian gods were never perfect. Modern audiences often imagine Greek gods as flawless beings. The myths tell a very different story. The Olympians were powerful, but they were also emotional. They became jealous. They argued. They made mistakes. They fell in love. They sought revenge. Sometimes, their greatest weakness wasn't humanity. It was themselves. Unlike the gods of many religions, the Olympians behaved almost like immortal humans. Only their power separated them from ordinary people. This made Greek mythology unique. Because the gods weren't symbols of perfection. They were reflections of human nature, magnified beyond imagination. Every emotion became stronger. Every mistake became more destructive. Every personal conflict affected the entire world. Chapter 2. Poseidon never forgot an insult. Among all the Olympians, none hated Odysseus more than Poseidon. But, surprisingly, Poseidon's anger didn't begin with a great battle. It began with pride. After escaping from the Cyclops Polyphemus, Odysseus couldn't resist celebrating. Instead of quietly sailing away, he shouted his real name. He wanted the giant to know exactly who had defeated him. It felt like victory. Instead, it became disaster. Because Polyphemus wasn't just another monster. He was Poseidon's son. The sea god didn't simply lose a child. He lost his honor. In ancient Greece, honor meant everything. Poseidon's revenge wasn't immediate. It was patient. Every storm, every shipwreck, every year lost at sea, became another reminder that pride often creates consequences far greater than the original mistake. The gods weren't punishing Odysseus because he was evil. They punished him because he forgot humility. Chapter 3. Athena's favorite mortal. If Poseidon represented vengeance, Athena represented wisdom. She admired intelligence more than brute force. Unlike many heroes, Odysseus rarely rushed into battle without thinking. He planned. He observed. He adapted. These qualities reflected Athena herself. She saw something unique inside the king of Ithaca. Not perfection. Potential. Athena never solved every problem for Odysseus. Instead, she gave him opportunities, guidance, small advantages. The final decisions always remained his. This relationship teaches an important lesson. Even divine help cannot replace personal responsibility. Athena could open doors. Only Odysseus could choose whether to walk through them. Chapter 4. Zeus and the balance of fate. Above every Olympian stood Zeus, king of the gods, guardian of order. Many assume Zeus controlled every event in the Odyssey. The reality is more complicated. Even Zeus respected fate. Ancient Greeks believed that destiny existed beyond both gods and humans. The gods could delay events. They could influence people. They could create obstacles. But certain outcomes remained unavoidable. This idea created one of mythology's deepest philosophical questions. If destiny already exists, do our choices still matter? The Odyssey answers with surprising wisdom. Yes, the destination may remain fixed, but the journey depends entirely on our decisions. Odysseus was destined to return home. No prophecy guaranteed how much he would suffer first. That suffering was shaped by his own actions. Chapter 5. Why the gods feared human perseverance. At first glance, this idea sounds impossible. How could immortal beings fear ordinary humans? Not because humans possessed greater power, but because humans possessed something the gods never truly experienced. Mortality. Every human life eventually ends. Because of this, every decision matters. Every goodbye carries weight. Every sunrise becomes precious. The gods had eternity. Humans had urgency. That urgency created courage. Odysseus continued fighting because he knew time was limited. The Olympians could wait forever. He could not. Ironically, the weakness of humanity became its greatest strength. Mortality gave life meaning. Without endings, victories lose significance. Without risk, courage becomes impossible. Chapter 6. Calypso's Impossible Offer. One of the most revealing moments in the Odyssey comes when Calypso makes Odysseus an incredible offer. Stay with her forever and become immortal. No more pain, no more aging, no more death. For many people, the decision would be easy. Who wouldn't choose eternal life? Odysseus refuses, not because immortality lacks value, but because eternity without purpose is another kind of prison. He chooses an uncertain future over endless comfort, a mortal life with family over endless perfection. This decision reveals what separates humans from gods. The gods exist forever. Part 7. What happens when one of the greatest filmmakers of our generation decides to remake the oldest adventure ever written? Christopher Nolan has spent decades redefining modern cinema. From twisting time in Interstellar, to bending reality in Inception, to recreating history in Oppenheimer, every film has challenged audiences to think beyond the screen. Now, Nolan is taking on an even bigger challenge, a story nearly 3,000 years old. a legend that inspired countless civilizations. The Odyssey. But this won't be just another adaptation. If history has taught us anything, it's that Christopher Nolan never tells a story the way you expect. So what makes The Odyssey the perfect Nolan movie? And why could this become the biggest cinematic event of the decade? Let's find out. Introduction. Every filmmaker dreams of creating one unforgettable masterpiece. Some choose science fiction. Others choose history. A few explore superheroes. Christopher Nolan has done all three. Yet, among all the stories available to modern cinema, he chose one written nearly 3,000 years ago. At first, that decision surprised millions. Why return to an ancient Greek poem? Why revisit a story audiences already know? The answer lies inside Nolan's filmmaking philosophy. Throughout his career, he has never been interested in simple action. He explores memory, identity, time, choice, sacrifice, reality itself. Remarkably, The Odyssey explores those exact same themes. Perhaps Christopher Nolan wasn't searching for a new story. Perhaps he found the oldest story that already contained every idea he has spent his career exploring. Chapter 1. Why the Odyssey still matters today. Many people assume ancient stories have become outdated. Technology changes. Society evolves. Civilizations rise and fall. Yet, the Odyssey continues to resonate. Why? Because human nature has barely changed. People still fear failure, still search for purpose, still struggle with temptation, still long for home. The names have changed. The world has changed. But the emotions remain exactly the same. Odysseus isn't remembered because he defeated monsters. He's remembered because he represents every person trying to overcome impossible circumstances. That timeless quality makes the story perfect for modern audiences. Chapter 2. Christopher Nolan never makes simple movies. One pattern appears throughout Nolan's career. His films demand attention. They reward patience. Every conversation matters. Every visual detail carries meaning. Every decision influences the ending. Unlike traditional blockbusters, his movies trust the audience. He rarely explains everything immediately. Instead, he allows viewers to discover the story themselves. That approach fits perfectly with The Odyssey, because Homer's poem was never simply an adventure. It's filled with symbolism, philosophy, psychology, moral questions, ancient history, mythology. Each viewing reveals something new. Exactly the kind of storytelling Nolan has always embraced. Chapter 3. Time has always been Nolan's greatest character. If one idea defines Christopher Nolan's filmmaking, it's time. In Memento, memory becomes fragmented. In Inception, time moves differently across dreams. In Interstellar, minutes become years. In Dunkirk, 3 different timelines unfold simultaneously. In Oppenheimer, past and present collide to reveal character. The Odyssey also revolves around time. 20 years separate Odysseus from his family. A single decision changes decades of life. Every passing year reshapes relationships. Telemachus becomes an adult without his father. Penelope grows older while refusing to surrender hope. Ithaca changes. Odysseus changes. Time isn't merely part of the story. It transforms every character inside it. This may become one of Nolan's greatest strengths in adapting the poem. Chapter 4. Expect a human story, not just a mythological one. Many adaptations focus on monsters, epic battles, large visual effects, spectacular action. Christopher Nolan usually begins somewhere else. Character. Even in his biggest productions, the emotional journey remains central. Batman wasn't merely fighting villains. He battled fear. Cooper wasn't merely traveling through space. He struggled with love, regret, and sacrifice. Oppenheimer wasn't simply building a bomb. He confronted guilt. If Nolan follows the same philosophy, the Odyssey won't simply ask, "Can Odysseus defeat monsters?" Instead, it may ask, "What kind of man returns home after 20 years of war?" That question is far more powerful than any battle sequence. Chapter 5: Reality and Myth. Throughout history, the Odyssey has existed somewhere between myth and history. Did Troy really exist? Archaeologists eventually discovered evidence suggesting it did. Did Odysseus truly meet Cyclopes? Or were those stories exaggerated by generations of storytellers? Did gods physically intervene? Or did ancient people explain natural disasters through mythology? Christopher Nolan often enjoys balancing reality with mystery. Rather than answering every question, he invites audiences to think. Perhaps the greatest mystery won't be whether monsters existed. Perhaps the real mystery will be how legends are born. Chapter 6: Why this story is bigger than one man. Although the Odyssey follows Odysseus, its emotional heart belongs to many people. Penelope, waiting. Telemachus, searching for his father. Athena, protecting wisdom. Poseidon, driven by revenge. Every character experiences the consequences of one man's journey. This isn't simply the story of survival. It's the story of everyone left behind. And that perspective gives the narrative extraordinary emotional depth. Chapter 7: The Challenge of Adapting a Legend. Adapting the Odyssey isn't easy. Readers have imagined these characters for centuries. Different cultures tell the story differently. Some versions emphasize mythology. Others focus on history. Some portray Odysseus as a flawless hero. Others present him as deeply flawed. Every adaptation must make choices. What should remain? What should change? What should be modernized? Christopher Nolan faces the same challenge every filmmaker encounters when adapting timeless literature. How do you respect the original while creating something that feels entirely new? Perhaps the answer isn't choosing between old and new. Part 8: The Psychology of Survival: How Odysseus Defeated the Impossible. What keeps a person alive after 20 years of endless suffering? Not food, not weapons, not luck. The answer lies much deeper, inside the human mind. Odysseus faced monsters that could crush entire armies, gods who controlled the oceans, temptations that promised eternal happiness, storms that destroyed kingdoms, yet somehow he survived them all. Was it because he was the strongest warrior? No. Was it because the gods always protected him? Absolutely not. The real reason is something psychologists still study today. Odysseus mastered the one battlefield where most people lose: his own mind. This is the psychology of survival, and the timeless lessons hidden inside the Odyssey. Introduction. Throughout history, millions of people have faced impossible situations: prisoners of war, explorers lost at sea, astronauts isolated in space, survivors trapped beneath earthquakes. They all shared one question: how do you keep going when everything tells you to give up? Long before modern psychology, long before neuroscience, the Odyssey explored that very mystery. At first glance, the story appears to be about monsters, but beneath every battle, another conflict unfolds, a psychological battle, one fought entirely inside Odysseus's mind. His greatest weapon wasn't a sword. It wasn't a shield. It wasn't divine intervention. It was resilience, the ability to remain hopeful, even when hope itself seemed impossible. Chapter 1. Survival begins in the mind. Many people believe survival depends primarily on physical strength. Ancient history repeatedly proves otherwise. The strongest warrior often falls first. The smartest sometimes fails. But those who refuse to surrender continue moving forward. Odysseus demonstrates this truth from the very beginning. After Troy falls, he expects to return home quickly. Instead, his journey transforms into years of uncertainty. Imagine waking every morning, not knowing whether you'll survive until sunset. Imagine watching your closest friends disappear one by one. Imagine realizing the gods themselves seem determined to destroy you. Most people would lose hope. Odysseus loses many things: ships, soldiers, friends, time. But he never completely loses purpose. And purpose becomes the foundation of survival. Chapter 2. Why purpose is stronger than fear. Modern psychologists often explain that people endure extraordinary hardship when they have a meaningful reason to continue. The Odyssey reveals the same principle. Odysseus doesn't fight simply to stay alive. He fights because someone is waiting. Penelope, Telemachus, his kingdom, his home. Every painful decision becomes easier because he remembers what lies beyond the suffering. Without purpose, pain feels meaningless. With purpose, pain becomes temporary. That difference changes everything. Throughout the journey, Odysseus constantly visualizes Ithaca. The image of home becomes psychological fuel. His destination keeps his mind alive, long before it saves his body. Chapter 3. Fear is necessary. People often believe courage means eliminating fear. The Odyssey suggests something very different. Odysseus fears many things: the Cyclops, Poseidon's storms, Scylla, the underworld, death itself. His courage doesn't come from lacking fear. It comes from acting despite it. Fear becomes information, not paralysis. Every dangerous encounter teaches him something new. Observe first. Act second. Panic never solves problems. Awareness often does. This distinction separates survivors from victims. One reacts. The other responds. Odysseus rarely allows emotion to make decisions. He allows emotion to signal danger. Then he lets reason choose the next step. Chapter 4. The Power of Adaptation. Nature rewards adaptation, not perfection. The strongest animal isn't always the one that survives. The one capable of adjusting often outlives every rival. Odysseus constantly changes. He becomes a warrior, a sailor, a negotiator, a storyteller, a beggar, a king. His identity remains flexible. That flexibility keeps him alive. People who cling too tightly to one version of themselves often break when circumstances change. Odysseus bends. He rarely shatters. The Odyssey quietly teaches that resilience isn't stubbornness. It's intelligent adaptation. Chapter 5. Loneliness can become a monster. Perhaps the greatest enemy Odysseus faces isn't physical at all. It's isolation. Years pass without seeing family. Friends disappear. Entire crews vanish. Conversations become memories. Hope slowly fades. Modern psychology recognizes prolonged loneliness as one of the most destructive experiences a human can endure. Yet Odysseus continues. How? Because although physically alone, he never feels spiritually empty. His memories become companions. His dreams become conversations. His purpose becomes company. Sometimes, the people we love continue carrying us, even when they're thousands of miles away. Chapter 6. The Psychology of Leadership. Leadership during crisis demands more than confidence. It demands emotional stability. Odysseus constantly faces impossible choices. Protect everyone, or sacrifice a few to save many. Speak the truth, or tell a necessary lie. Continue forward, or retreat. No decision guarantees success, yet hesitation often guarantees disaster. Great leaders rarely possess perfect answers. They simply continue making decisions while accepting responsibility for their consequences. Odysseus understands that leadership often feels lonely, because the person making the decision usually carries the greatest burden afterward. Chapter 7. Why the Sirens Almost Won. The Sirens never defeated people through violence. They defeated them through desire. Their songs promised exactly what each sailor wanted most: knowledge, comfort, fulfillment, recognition. The greatest psychological trap isn't force, it's temptation. Odysseus understands his own weakness, so instead of pretending to be immune, he prepares for it. He orders his crew to tie him to the mast. No matter what he says, no matter how loudly he begs. Part 9. The Secret Symbolism You Missed. Every Hidden Meaning in the Odyssey. YouTube Cinematic Documentary Style. Hook, midnight to 0:45. What if everything you thought you knew about the Odyssey was only the surface? What if the sea wasn't really the sea? What if the monsters weren't actually monsters? What if Ithaca wasn't simply a kingdom, but a symbol of every dream you've ever chased? For nearly 3,000 years, readers have admired the Odyssey as an epic adventure. But philosophers, historians, and literary scholars discovered something much deeper. Every island, every storm, every god, every battle carries a hidden message about life itself. Today, we're uncovering every secret symbol hidden inside the greatest adventure ever written. Because once you understand these meanings, you'll never see the Odyssey the same way again. Introduction. Stories survive for centuries because they entertain. Legends survive for thousands of years because they teach. That is why the Odyssey remains one of the greatest literary masterpieces in history. On the surface, it tells the story of one king trying to return home after war. But beneath every adventure lies another story. A symbolic one. Ancient Greek poets rarely wrote without purpose. Every object, every journey, every obstacle represented an idea larger than itself. The Odyssey is not simply about traveling across the Mediterranean Sea. It's about traveling through life. Every chapter becomes another lesson. Every symbol reveals another truth. Today, we'll explore the hidden meanings that most people never notice. Chapter 1. Ithaca was never just a kingdom. At first glance, Ithaca appears to be nothing more than Odysseus' homeland. A small island kingdom waiting for its king. But symbolically, Ithaca represents something much greater. Purpose. Throughout the entire journey, Odysseus constantly speaks about returning home. Not because Ithaca is wealthy, not because it's powerful, but because it gives his life meaning. Every person has an Ithaca. For some, it's family. For others, it's peace, a dream, a future, a purpose worth suffering for. Without Ithaca, the journey loses direction. The destination gives every sacrifice its value. Perhaps that's why reaching our goals often changes us more than the goals themselves. Chapter 2. The sea represents uncertainty. The sea never stays calm forever. Neither does life. Ancient Greek sailors understood this reality better than anyone. One peaceful morning could become a deadly storm before sunset. The ocean became the perfect symbol for uncertainty. No one controls it. No one predicts every wave. Odysseus cannot command the sea. He can only respond to it. Life follows the same pattern. We rarely control circumstances, but we always control our response. The sea teaches acceptance. Strength isn't preventing storms. Strength is learning how to sail through them. Chapter 3. The Cyclops represents blind pride. Polyphemus has only one eye. This detail is far more important than many people realize. One eye symbolizes one perspective. The Cyclops sees only his own truth. He refuses empathy. He refuses humility. He believes power makes him right. Odysseus defeats him not with force, but with intelligence. Yet immediately afterward, Odysseus falls into the very trap he escaped. His pride forces him to reveal his name. In that moment, the hunter becomes the victim. The lesson is timeless. Defeating arrogance means nothing if arrogance replaces it. Chapter 4. The sirens symbolize dangerous temptation. Unlike other monsters, the sirens don't attack. They invite. Their voices promise knowledge, beauty, understanding, everything the listener secretly desires. That makes them terrifying. Real temptation rarely appears ugly. It appears beautiful, comfortable, reasonable. Odysseus understands something profound. Willpower alone isn't enough. So he asks his crew to tie him to the mast. He prepares before temptation arrives. This isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Sometimes, the strongest decision is admitting your own vulnerability. Chapter 5. Scylla and Charybdis represent impossible choices. One side, a monster that will kill several sailors. The other, a whirlpool capable of destroying the entire ship. There is no perfect answer, only consequences. This symbolizes one of life's hardest realities. Some decisions offer no ideal outcome, only the least devastating one. Leadership often means accepting unavoidable loss. Odysseus cannot save everyone, but he can save most. The story reminds us that maturity isn't finding perfect choices. It's accepting responsibility when perfect choices don't exist. Chapter 6. The underworld represents self-reflection. Odysseus' journey into the land of the dead isn't simply a supernatural adventure. It represents confronting truth. Every person eventually faces moments where they must examine their own life, their mistakes, their regrets, their future. The underworld becomes a mirror. It forces Odysseus to see beyond pride, beyond ambition, beyond survival. He realizes life isn't endless. Time matters. Every decision matters. Because eventually, every journey reaches its end. Chapter 7. Penelope's loom represents hope. Each day, Penelope weaves. Each night, she secretly unravels her work. The loom becomes much more than cloth. It becomes hope itself. She refuses to allow time to decide her future. Instead, she quietly creates more time. Every thread symbolizes patience, faith, endurance. While Odysseus fights monsters abroad, Penelope fights despair at home. Together, their separate battles reveal two different forms of courage. Chapter 8. The gods represent human emotions. Poseidon isn't simply the sea. He represents anger. Athena symbolizes wisdom. Calypso represents comfort without purpose. Circe symbolizes seductive distraction. The gods aren't only external characters. They're emotional forces living inside every human being. The Odyssey suggests that our greatest battles often occur within ourselves. Chapter 9. Home represents identity. When Odysseus finally reaches Ithaca, the journey isn't over. He must first rediscover who he has become. 20 years changed everything. The king who left for Troy no longer exists. The man who returns carries scars no one else can see. Home isn't valuable because it remains unchanged. It's valuable because it reveals how much we've changed. Sometimes, finding home means finding ourselves. Part 10. For nearly 3,000 years, the world has asked one impossible question. Did Odysseus really exist? Was the Trojan War a real event? Or was it nothing more than an ancient legend? How could one man survive monsters, gods, and a journey that lasted 20 years? Were the Cyclopes real? Did the sirens actually sing sailors to their deaths? Or have we misunderstood the Odyssey all along? Today, we're separating history from mythology, fact from fiction, and uncovering the incredible real-world events that may have inspired one of humanity's greatest stories. Because, sometimes, the truth behind a legend is even more fascinating than the legend itself. Introduction. Every civilization has stories that shape its identity. Egypt had the tales of its pharaohs. Mesopotamia had the Epic of Gilgamesh. India had the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. Greece had two masterpieces, the Iliad and the Odyssey. For centuries, people believed these stories belonged entirely to mythology. But everything changed during the 19th century. Archaeologists began making discoveries that shocked the academic world. Places once dismissed as legends suddenly became real. Ancient cities emerged from beneath the earth. Royal tombs appeared. Weapons, walls, and evidence of a forgotten civilization changed history forever. Could Homer have been describing actual events? Or were these simply remarkable coincidences? Today, we're exploring the historical world hidden beneath the Odyssey. Chapter 1. Who was Homer? Before asking whether Odysseus existed, we must first ask another question. Who created his story? The answer isn't as simple as many imagine. Very little is known about Homer himself. Some historians believe he lived during the 8th century BCE. Others argue he may have represented generations of oral storytellers rather than one individual. In ancient Greece, stories were rarely written immediately. Instead, professional poets memorized enormous epics. For generations, these stories passed from one storyteller to another. Each performance preserved history, while allowing small changes over time. Eventually, someone recorded them. Whether that person was truly Homer remains one of history's greatest mysteries. Ironically, the author of one of humanity's most famous stories may remain forever unknown. Chapter 2. Was the Trojan War real? For centuries, many scholars dismissed Troy as fiction, a mythical city created for entertainment. Then, in the late 19th century, German businessman and amateur archaeologist Heinrich Schliemann began searching for it. Most experts laughed. They believed he was chasing fantasy. Yet, after years of excavation, he uncovered the remains of an ancient city in what is now northwestern Turkey. Massive defensive walls, destroyed buildings, layers of civilization, evidence that the city had been rebuilt multiple times. Modern archaeology suggests that one phase of the city experienced violent destruction during the Late Bronze Age. Was this Homer's Troy? Many historians believe it could have inspired the legend, although the exact details of the war remain uncertain. The discovery changed everything. For the first time, a story once considered pure myth now had historical foundations. Chapter 3. Did Odysseus really exist? This question remains unanswered. Unlike Troy, no archaeological discovery has confirmed the existence of Odysseus as a historical king. However, that doesn't necessarily mean he never lived. Ancient heroes often became larger than life over centuries of storytelling. One remarkable leader could eventually inspire countless legends. Perhaps Odysseus represented one historical ruler. Perhaps several different explorers merged into a single legendary figure. Or perhaps he was always intended as a symbolic hero. Regardless of the answer, his story reveals astonishing knowledge of Bronze Age navigation, politics, and Mediterranean geography, knowledge that likely came from real experience. Chapter 4. Could the monsters have been real? This is where history meets imagination. Take the Cyclops. Rather than a literal giant, some researchers suggest the legend may have been inspired by ancient elephant skulls. The large opening in the center of the skull resembles a single enormous eye. People unfamiliar with extinct animals may have imagined gigantic one-eyed creatures. The sirens may have originated from dangerous coastal rocks where sailors often heard strange echoes created by wind and waves. Scylla and Charybdis may symbolize hazardous sea routes containing powerful currents and whirlpools. Ancient sailors frequently transformed natural dangers into memorable stories, not because they intended to deceive, but because stories were easier to remember than maps. Myth became education. Chapter 5. Why ancient sailors believed the sea was alive. Imagine crossing the Mediterranean Sea without engines, without weather forecasts, without modern navigation. Every voyage became an act of faith. Storms appeared without warning. Currents changed direction unexpectedly. Dense fog concealed hidden rocks. To ancient sailors, the sea felt alive. When disasters occurred, they searched for meaning. Poseidon became that explanation. Today, we understand meteorology. Ancient Greeks understood mythology. Different explanations for the same terrifying experience. Chapter 6. The Bronze Age World. The Odyssey reflects a fascinating period of history. Powerful kingdoms connected through trade. Bronze weapons, palaces, merchant ships, international diplomacy. Then, around 1200 BCE, many civilizations collapsed almost simultaneously. Cities burned. Trade routes disappeared. Kingdoms fell. Historians still debate the causes. Part 11. Every major character explained. The hidden truth behind every hero, god, and monster. Heroes don't create legendary stories alone. Kings are remembered because of the enemies they face. Wars are won because of the allies who stand beside them. And sometimes, the most important character isn't the hero at all. The Odyssey is filled with unforgettable figures. A king who refuses to surrender. A queen who waits for 20 years. A son searching for a father he barely remembers. A goddess who believes in humanity. A god consumed by revenge. A witch. A nymph. A giant. And monsters that reveal the darkest parts of the human soul. Today, we're exploring every major character in the Odyssey and the hidden meaning each one brings to the greatest adventure ever told. Great stories are never remembered because of only one character. They survive because every person changes the journey. The Odyssey follows Odysseus. But without Penelope, there is no home to return to. Without Athena, there is no wisdom. Without Poseidon, there is no challenge. Without Telemachus, there is no future. Every character represents more than an individual. Each one symbolizes a different part of life, a different emotion, a different philosophy. Together, they transform a simple adventure into one of humanity's greatest masterpieces. Let's meet the extraordinary people behind the Odyssey. Chapter 1. Odysseus, the man who won with his mind. Unlike Achilles, Odysseus wasn't remembered because he was invincible. His greatest weapon was intelligence. He studied people. He observed situations. He adapted faster than anyone around him. His victories rarely came from brute strength. Instead, they came from patience, strategy, and understanding human nature. But Odysseus wasn't perfect. His pride often created new disasters. After escaping the Cyclops, he revealed his identity. One moment of arrogance led to years of suffering. That flaw makes him deeply human. He teaches us that greatness isn't the absence of mistakes. It's the willingness to keep moving despite them. Chapter 2. Penelope, the queen who refused to surrender. While Odysseus fought monsters, Penelope fought time. She had no army, no magical weapons, no divine powers, only patience, intelligence, and faith. For 20 years, she protected Ithaca without leaving the palace. Her famous weaving trick wasn't merely clever. It represented hope. Every thread became another day of resistance. Every night she quietly reclaimed time itself. Penelope proves that courage isn't always loud. Sometimes, the strongest people fight battles no one else can see. Chapter 3. Telemachus, the boy who had to become a man. When Odysseus left for Troy, Telemachus was an infant. By the time his father returned, he had become an adult, without guidance, without certainty, without knowing whether his father still lived. His journey mirrors many young people searching for identity. He grows through responsibility, through difficult choices, through accepting leadership before feeling ready. Telemachus reminds us that growing up rarely happens when life becomes easier. It happens when life demands more from us than we thought possible. Chapter 4. Athena, the goddess of wisdom. Athena never simply rescued Odysseus. She challenged him to become wiser. Unlike other gods, she valued intelligence above violence, planning above pride, learning above power. Her guidance often arrived quietly. A suggestion, a disguise, an opportunity. She rarely solved problems herself. Instead, she helped Odysseus solve them. True wisdom doesn't remove obstacles. It teaches people how to overcome them. Chapter 5. Poseidon, the god who never forgave. Poseidon represents something every person eventually encounters: consequences. Odysseus blinded the Cyclops, then proudly announced his name. Poseidon answered with storms. Years of suffering, countless losses. His anger wasn't random. It reflected the idea that actions echo far beyond the moment they happen. Poseidon reminds us that one careless decision can reshape an entire future. Chapter 6. Circe, the illusion of easy happiness. Circe appears as a powerful enchantress. She transforms men into animals, not merely through magic, but through weakness. Her island symbolizes comfort without responsibility, a place where people forget purpose. Odysseus eventually leaves, because he understands a profound truth. Comfort without growth eventually becomes another prison. Chapter 7. Calypso, the woman who offered eternity. Imagine being offered eternal youth, immortality, perfect peace, no more suffering, no more war, no more fear. Calypso offers all of it. Odysseus refuses. Why? Because eternity means nothing without the people we love. Calypso represents the temptation to abandon purpose for pleasure. Odysseus chooses an uncertain human life over endless perfection. That decision defines his character. Chapter 8. Polyphemus, strength without wisdom. The Cyclops believes physical power makes him superior. He ignores kindness. He ignores justice. He ignores hospitality. His single eye symbolizes narrow thinking. He sees only his own perspective. Ultimately, intelligence defeats strength. Yet Polyphemus changes history through one final prayer. His defeat becomes Odysseus' greatest curse. Chapter 9. The Sirens, the voices we secretly want to hear. The sirens never force anyone to approach. They simply sing. Their songs promise exactly what each traveler desires most: knowledge, recognition, fulfillment. They represent temptation itself. The danger isn't the music. The danger is believing we're immune to it. Odysseus survives because he prepares before temptation arrives. Chapter 10. Scylla and Charybdis. The Price of Leadership. Sometimes, leadership offers no perfect solution, only painful choices. Scylla guarantees the loss of a few sailors. Charybdis threatens everyone. Odysseus chooses the lesser tragedy. Not because he wants to, because he must. These monsters remind us that true leaders often carry invisible guilt. They save many, while never forgetting those they couldn't save. Chapter 11. The Suitors. Greed without honor. The suitors don't simply seek Penelope's hand. They seek power. They consume the kingdom's wealth, disrespect its traditions, ignore its laws. They symbolize corruption, impatience, entitlement. Their downfall isn't caused by bad luck. It's caused by believing power belongs to those willing to take it. Part 12. You've probably heard the story of Odysseus, the legendary king who survived monsters, gods, and impossible seas. But what if I told you that the greatest secrets of the Odyssey aren't hidden in its battles? They're hidden in the details most people never notice. Why did Odysseus reveal his name to the Cyclops? Why did Athena help him while Poseidon hunted him? Why did Penelope test her own husband after waiting 20 years? Why was the marriage bed impossible to move? And what if every one of these moments carried a deeper meaning about human nature? Today, we're uncovering everything you probably missed in the Odyssey. The hidden symbols, the forgotten details, and the timeless lessons that transformed an ancient Greek poem into one of the greatest stories ever told. Introduction. The greatest stories never reveal all of their secrets the first time you experience them. Some details seem ordinary. Some conversations appear insignificant. Some objects feel like simple background decoration. But years later, you realize they were quietly preparing you for something much bigger. The Odyssey works exactly like that. On the surface, it's an epic adventure. Beneath that, it's a masterpiece of symbolism, psychology, and philosophy. Every choice has consequences. Every object tells a story. Every small detail shapes the journey. Today, we're looking beyond the obvious, because sometimes the smallest details reveal the biggest truths. Chapter 1. The Trojan Horse was never the real victory. Many people believe the Trojan Horse was the greatest achievement of Odysseus. In reality, it became the beginning of his greatest failure. The horse proved his intelligence, but it also planted the seed of pride. After defeating Troy, Odysseus began believing no challenge was impossible. That confidence later became overconfidence. His greatest strength slowly transformed into his greatest weakness. The Odyssey quietly reminds us, success often creates the dangers that failure never could. Chapter 2. Why Odysseus revealed his name. One question has puzzled readers for centuries. After escaping the Cyclops, why didn't Odysseus simply remain silent? He had already won. The answer reveals one of the oldest lessons about human psychology. People don't always seek victory. Sometimes, they seek recognition. Odysseus wanted Polyphemus to remember who defeated him. He wanted history to know his name. For one brief moment, his desire for glory became stronger than his instinct for survival. That single decision changed the next 10 years of his life. One sentence, one moment of pride, one lifetime of consequences. Chapter 3. The Bag of Winds was never about wind. Aeolus trusted Odysseus with a mysterious bag containing every dangerous wind. His crew assumed it contained treasure. Their curiosity destroyed everything. The hidden lesson isn't about magic. It's about trust. Great teams collapse when suspicion replaces communication. The sailors never asked questions. They made assumptions. Assumptions became jealousy. Jealousy became disaster. The Odyssey teaches that relationships rarely fail because of secrets alone. They fail because people imagine stories instead of seeking truth. Chapter 4. Why Athena never solved everything. Athena constantly helped Odysseus, yet she never simply transported him home. Why? Because wisdom cannot be borrowed. It must be earned. Athena opens doors. Odysseus must still walk through them. She offers guidance. He accepts responsibility. This relationship reveals something fascinating about growth. Real mentors don't remove challenges. They prepare people to face them. Without struggle, there is no transformation. Chapter 5. Penelope's test was more brilliant than you think. After 20 years, Odysseus finally returns. Yet Penelope doesn't immediately embrace him. Instead, she tests him. Many readers misunderstand this moment. They assume she doubts his identity. The truth runs much deeper. She understands deception. For 20 years, she has survived through intelligence. Why would she suddenly abandon caution? She orders servants to move their marriage bed. Odysseus immediately objects. The bed cannot be moved. It was built around a living olive tree. Only the real Odysseus could know that secret. The test wasn't about mistrust. It was about certainty. Hope deserves proof. Chapter 6. The Olive Tree Secret. One of the most beautiful details in the Odyssey often goes unnoticed. Odysseus built his marriage bed around an olive tree rooted deep within the earth. The bed literally cannot exist anywhere else. Ancient Greeks considered the olive tree sacred. It symbolized peace, endurance, wisdom, family. By building the bed around living roots, the story quietly suggests something extraordinary. True love isn't built upon convenience. It's built upon foundations too deep to move. 20 years of separation, wars, storms, and gods themselves could not uproot what genuine commitment created. Chapter 7. The Beggar Disguise. When Odysseus reaches Ithaca, he doesn't announce himself as king. Instead, he disguises himself as a beggar. Why would a victorious hero hide his identity? Because appearance reveals very little about character. The disguise exposes everyone's true nature. The loyal remain loyal. The greedy become cruel. The arrogant reveal themselves. Without realizing it, every character judges themselves, not the beggar. This lesson remains timeless. People often reveal who they are, long before they realize anyone is watching. Chapter 8. Why the suitors never recognized him. At first glance, this seems impossible. How could people living inside his palace fail to recognize their own king? The answer lies in expectation. People usually see what they expect to see. The suitors expected a homeless beggar, so that's exactly what they saw. The Odyssey quietly explores confirmation bias thousands of years before psychology gave it a name. Our expectations shape perception. Sometimes, the truth stands directly before us, yet we completely miss it. Chapter 9. Every monster reflected Odysseus. One extraordinary pattern appears throughout the journey. Every monster reveals another weakness inside Odysseus himself. The Cyclops reflects pride. The Lotus reflects complacency. The Sirens reflect temptation.